Hello, and welcome to Land of Confusion, the Ricochet show by members, for members, where we interview members. And I'm Dave March, and this is my co-host.
Members.
Mhm.
Hi, Don from California.
Mhm.
And here we are with our guest.
Yep. And our guest today is James Salerno, who was previously on one of our panel shows, but this time we're going to get into in-depth knowledge of his. But at the time, it was the panel show right after the election, in which we were very confused about certain things. And he was telling us all about how his district was still being contested. And now here it is, a week after the inauguration, and his congressional district is still being contested.
Yes, I'm the only one left on the bus, I guess. Here in January, well past time here. And last time I checked, it was separated by about 12 votes. I think it was hanging at about 20 votes for like a month or so, and now the courts narrowed it down to 12 that are being contested. So yes, very, very, very close race. And we kind of talked about this before, David, when we did the post-election show. It's just kind of embarrassing that they can't count. Especially this.
My understanding, boxes to ballots just end up in people's desk drawers somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of them have a mind of their own, I guess.
California took a long time also. I don't know which congressional districts may or may not be still counting in California, but California took a very long time. It's pretty embarrassing. It's indicative of so much wrong.
I'm trying to think, and I didn't do the research, but I don't know, I wonder if this has ever happened before, where like a congressional race was that close to where it actually went past Inauguration Day.
Oh yeah, that's true. I know California routinely takes forever. Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks is forever for me, from Canada being where it's usually 45 minutes.
And what's more, we should be getting better at it.
Yeah,
where technology's improving, we got experience behind us. We've been doing it for a couple hundred years. This should not be a problem. There's something this is indicative of just a really, really messed up system.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is exactly, but it's something that's messed up really badly.
Yeah, because I've watched the English election, and they're a little bit more fun than Canadian elections. We got rid of a lot of the old pomp and circumstance, which happens still in the English elections, where like you have to like wear this big ribbon when you're going in. And I remember watching the British election where the Prime Minister comes in and he's like, "I just want to thank Lord Fauntleroy and the guy from the Monster Party and everyone else who put in a good race." It's like one guy's like, "What is with this guy?" And he's like, "Oh, he's the violent offshoot of the Raging Monster Party." So yeah, there's some interesting, but they have the fact that they have to they have like giant facilities where they hand count every ballot. And I mean, that's usually how it works here in Canada, but it's all like church halls or whatever, wherever the vote is, and they do it there. And what was the other one? And the last provincial here in Ontario, we had giant tabulating machines, so they would count. And it took 45 minutes for most of the province. 14.
So which congressional district is this?
22. So 22. It stretches from like I believe like the Oswego area, like all the way to the northern border of Pennsylvania. So it covers I don't think it covers Syracuse, but it covers like Utica, Binghamton, that area.
Okay, so it is a lot of small towns.
Yeah, I mean, Binghamton, I guess, would be the metropolis, and when that's the metropolis, I mean, it's not a huge, huge district population wise, but yeah, I mean, it's very rural. But like Utica area, and like your cities.
Utica, where they call them steamed hams.
Yes, right? A classic. I know what you're talking about there.
I've driven through these places, usually on my way to somewhere else. But, yeah. Was it? It's just like, who had this seat before the election?
Oh, the Democrat did, Brindisi.
Oh, okay.
And he's running against the Republican was actually in that seat before he won in 20 was it 2018, I think?
Okay.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's right. So yeah, so she was kind of a rerun, but I mean, she's for a Republican, she's actually not bad. Like she was very like pro-Trump. Like if she was in the position that some of these Republicans are currently in, I think she probably would have showed a bit more of a backbone than some of these guys. But anyways,
well, we're certainly seeing that in some of the people down there. I hear Liz Cheney's facing recall. That's what I'm hearing next. Is apparently not only do they have the ability to primary her, and she's at like 11% approval. I get it. Your father's Dick Cheney, but your state voted for the guy by like 78%. Like, how did you possibly think this would be acceptable?
I saw an article. I don't remember which paper it was in, but it was talking about like making Liz Cheney like the new face of the Republican Party, and I'm just like, oh dear God, like, can you guys read the room at all? Like, no, we do not want to go back in this direction. Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's pretty much the situation. Is that there's a lot of people just can't read the room. They're in their little locked bubbles, and they talk to everyone who agrees with them, and they just don't understand what's happened. And it's like, okay.
Yep.
So so James, you mentioned that you in your bio here, we were looking at it. So you've grown up your entire life in New York, or did you move? I believe you moved somewhere.
Yeah, I was actually I was born on Long Island. I was born
whereabouts on Long Island?
Hempstead.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Hempstead. So I lived there. My family grew up there, or my parents grew up there. I have some family still in that area. We moved upstate.
Tell them hi.
What's that?
Tell them hi for me.
Are you?
I was going to say the name Salerno is. I'm very familiar with it. There's a lot of Salernos where I grew up on Long Island.
All right, so my grandfather was one of, I think, like 12 kids. So like almost every time I either go to a new place, start a new job, anything new, like everybody's like, oh, do you know so-and-so Salerno? I'm like, yeah, probably. It's like, it's a very big extended family, so I'm sure we're related.
So I grew up in Port Washington.
Okay.
Which is how many miles from Hempstead?
Is that
not many?
Is that on? That's not on the island, is it? It is? Okay.
North Shore.
Okay, that's probably
between Great Neck and Roslyn.
Yeah, I think you're a little ways further out. That's probably like 45 minutes to an hour. Hempstead, I think.
Oh, no.
No,
right north of Hempstead.
Oh, okay. I see. I only lived there for like the first 7 years of my life. So, and I tried to stay away from the place.
So, for instance, if I look at my high school yearbook, we got Salernos. We got Salernos. Do you know Marie Salerno right here? Or Beth Salerno right here?
I don't know.
We got Salerno.
Like Stan from Canada. I'm like, oh yeah, I know Stan. Like,
we got Salernos. There are a bunch of businesses with people with named Salerno in Port Washington. So.
Oh, okay.
The place was crawling with them.
Yeah.
So that's what I said. Oh.
Yeah, we try to take over wherever we go, but I don't think there's too many left there now. I mean, I have like family on the other side that's still there, but not much. My grandfather was born in Utica, like back in the day when Utica was like a hop-in, pre-industrial collapse, like when they actually made things in Utica. So he was born there. So he kind of did like the reverse of what I did. He was born in Utica, or my father was born in Utica, but only lived there for like a year or two. And then they moved down to Long Island for, better economic opportunities and stuff back then. So, and then my dad did the reverse. He grew up there for most of his life. And then we moved back up to Utica because, he still had connections with family members and stuff up here. And that town was like, it was kind of going to hell, like in the 80s. Like
Utica was?
No, well, it is now, I think, but I'm talking about like Hempstead area, like back in the 80s. Yeah, so like my parents didn't want to raise us. I have one brother. My parents didn't want to raise us there, so we moved up here, and it's
what's sad.
Yeah.
I left in, well, sort of when I went to college, so around late 70s,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and I haven't been back once since.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of miss it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got, I mean, it's definitely got its own character. Like sometimes I like to go visit. I would never want to live there again. And just like the commutes and everybody's yelling all the time. And it's just, it's fun to, to be around that for a little while. But if you live there, it would get on your nerves. But I mean, like,
You're also, everybody there, I don't know about your town, but probably everybody commutes by train into New York. And so, and leaves a lot of the towns as more like, what are they called? Bedroom communities.
Yep.
Right.
That's what my mom's dad, my grandfather on the other side, he did that. I mean, I think almost everybody did that. He worked for the power company. So, you got on the train, went to work in the city and came back. And a lot of
my dad too.
Every day. Yeah.
My dad too. And everybody did that. And of course, New York City's population doubles during the day.
Yeah.
Or it did
and that's
for a while.
What. Yeah, it did.
No,
now,
Who knows how much of it is doubling?
Right. But yeah, it's weird that New York City is totally built for that, right? Penn Station, just everything comes in under the rivers, right? The tunnels under the rivers, the trains just come in. Penn Station.
Yeah.
And they're all electric because you can't have diesel in tunnels and underground. So yeah, it's all built for it.
Yeah.
And speaking of yelling at people, like you gave it up for yelling at people in Utica to move to downtown New York itself for high school. That looks of things.
Oh no, Utica is actually we moved from Hempstead to Utica. So
okay.
Yeah, Utica's kind of like, it's your basic like post-industrial city where like you can tell there used to be stuff, but now like buildings are empty. Like there still is like call centers and things like that. But yeah, I mean, kind of when all the the manufacturing industries and stuff took a big hit in like the 70s and stuff.
Well, you said I read your thing is Central New York, and of course I'm Canadian, so I just assume Central New York is.
Okay, yeah, Utica. Like if you had to literally draw like a dot in the center of New York, that's like pretty much where Utica is. Well, I mean, I know New York kind of gets a bad rap for like the politics and stuff, but I mean, it is two different states. Like once you get upstate, like I can go do stuff and like there's commerce and whatever and go find things to do and like, like the cities or whatever's left of the cities. And then I can drive like a half hour north and then I'm in the Adirondack Mountains and I can completely disappear and nobody would find, like, it's very remote. It's beautiful up there too. I mean, I love having that in my backyard.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And it's an awkward arrangement because New York City is the center of everything, and it shares that metropolitan area with multiple states, like New Jersey and Connecticut and all, and that's unusual. It's very strange. It's people going across state lines just to commute to work. It's a very unusual setup, but
I guess. DC is the only other place I can think of really like that.
DC, yeah.
But I think, I mean, right now I think we're at the beginning of the end of that kind of economy and like the commuting and stuff. Because when you look at like, I mean, what's going on with all like the lockdowns and stuff, like all these businesses that had people commuting, people are working from home and doing the exact same thing, and they're not losing any productivity. And as somebody who used to work in insurance, I can tell you, like, if you have casualty insurance in the city, it is extremely expensive compared to if you're just insuring telecommuter employees or, working from home.
I've never even thought about that from the insurance perspective. I just know that like a lot of companies are looking at their office expenses, and they're like, we don't have to. We're getting better productivity with people sitting at home. Than coming into these offices where we have to have these managers who are wasting all their time, spending all their time looking at them.
That's the position that I'm in right now. Actually, we were sent home back in March, kind of like when everybody was sent home. And I've been working from home ever since. And there's no like official word yet on what's going to happen, but they're kind of leaning towards, we're probably, we're kind of looking at our bottom line, and it doesn't really make sense to have you guys come in anymore. So, which it's kind of a pain on my end, because I'm actually in the process of looking for a house right now. And if it doesn't matter that I have to work from home, then I can just go live wherever I want. But nothing's set in stone yet. So it's like, I want to buy a house 2 states over and then find out I have to go back into the office the next week or something.
So in Silicon Valley, where I live, everything's very mixed. I mean, there are industrial parks just a few blocks away. And so you'll have like, a few blocks of industry, a few blocks of retail, a few blocks of residential. It's really mixed up, possibly messed up. Los Angeles, a lot like that too.
Yeah.
Very different from the East Coast in that regard.
I know, because I have like a cousin that lives in LA, and she was born on Long Island, and she said it's just the way the city in general is. It's just far more spread out. Like it's not like New York where everything's crunched into one little spot. So yeah, it's interesting we have these approaches. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the last 2 jobs I had, were within walking distance. So yeah, you can do stuff like that.
Certainly envied my father that looking back on it, he was working at McMaster University, so he bought this house, and he got to walk every day to work and home from work every day, and carried a briefcase the entire time. And it was like, I didn't think too much of it at the time, but it's like, wow, that's so nice. He had a 2-mile walk every day. I wonder why he lived so long.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. That is perfect.
And so you started off, one of the old Ricochet questions we used to ask is, how did you know that you were not like all the other kids? When did you realize you were a rabid right-winger who loved Trump?
Okay, well, both my parents are Republicans, right? But I never really thought about that too much as a kid. Like I think I had it really good. I was born in '83, so I'm probably like the last
kid.
Well, I'm probably one of the last of like the last generation that before like this hyper offensive, like everything is like bothering me sort of like we didn't have the internet when I was growing up, but that was starting to come out when I was in high school, same as cell phones. So we saw like the end of all that old stuff, but we were still young enough to where like the beginning of like the new technology and the new cultural stuff was kind of starting to happen.
So were you at a generation young enough still to be like let loose by your parents and not expected to come home till the lights were off?
Yeah. Like, so like, I definitely remember like there's times where my parents would just be like, okay, go. And like, we have stuff to do around the house, and like, you're being annoying, like get out. Like, and I would be like 12 years old. Right. And like, I don't know, I don't think parents do that anymore, but I go disappear. I had $2 on me, so I could afford to maybe buy some candy to keep myself going for the rest of the day or something. But it was fun. I mean, I rode my bike everywhere. I see kids now, and it's just like, I mean, even before like all this like COVID stuff where everybody's scared to death of everything, but I mean, it was already kind of going in that direction, and I think that's sad. But anyways, like to answer your question though, so I never really put too much thought into politics. Both parents again were Republican, and there was something that I don't know how familiar you are with like the Oneida Indian Nation, like when they first started building like their casinos here in the early 90s. And there was actually a lot of pushback at the time because they also owned gas stations, and they were pushing out all the local businesses because they didn't pay taxes. So everybody was going to go to the Indians, and there was kind of a big stink about that. And my dad was like, he was kind of one of the guys who was against it because, you know, he was kind of looking at it from like a fair, like, you know, if we have to pay business taxes on all this stuff, and then you guys should too, you know the story.
Yeah.
And that always kind of stuck with me. I'm like, yeah, he's kind of making a point. So I kind of always looked at things like that from like an empirical standpoint. Like I didn't really like immediately react with emotion like towards those kind of things. I kind of just, you know, the law is the law. It should apply equally to everybody. So while I wasn't political, I was always kind of had that mindset. And it actually kind of made it difficult because I actually, when I first went to school, I went for fine art, which is a complete waste. So nobody do that. And I went to New Paltz. New Paltz is like a sleepy hippie town right outside of Poughkeepsie. And I thought they were going to teach me like architectural drawing skills, and like, you know, we'd be like studying like the masters and stuff like that. And like the first day I was there, or one of the first days, I remember there was a kid who his piece of art was like just a big rusty piece of sheet metal with condoms nailed to it. And it represented his something, right? And I'm just like, I don't really fit in here. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, if you're like a conservative, Republican, whatever, like anything even remotely right, like you don't really fit in anywhere. But when you go into the art field, then you really, really don't fit in. So that's when I kind of knew I wasn't one of the gang, I guess.
Did you stay in that school though?
No, I actually wised up. I could have probably ruined my life if I stayed there. You know, I could have racked up 80 grand in debt that I would have never paid back because I would have never got a real job. I was lucky. I got a lot of aid when I first went there. So I think I only had to take out a loan for like $2,000, which I paid back pretty easily. So I dodged a bullet. And yeah, so.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm looking at a lot of these education things, and it's like, if you can get your degree, you can usually make back the money. But a lot of times, people do the 2 years, don't get their full degree, and then they're got this $80,000 debt. I have a friend of mine who ended up in that situation. It's like,
it's awful. And
well,
they're
even with the 4 years, if you're majoring in something that doesn't have a lot of market demand, say gender studies, you know, it's not going to work out well. And I think it's interesting to see how this happened, because back in the old days, well, let's say back early 60s or so, far fewer people went to college, and those that did to actually learn for a specific profession, perhaps engineering or architecture or science, business, civil engineering, all sorts of things, law, you know, specific professions. And you equate then this college education for the specific profession to higher salary, more impressive job, or more powerful job. And once those were linked, it says, oh, go to college, get a bigger salary, regardless of what you major in. And then there was a demand for people majoring in gender studies. And so now colleges offer gender studies, and you get the demand at the same, which is not useful. And then you get the demand at the same time. So it's a win-win for them. And then with the demand for college, the prices go up.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win-win for them. I just follow the incentives along the way, and you can see pretty much how it's going to go. And now you've got what you described just right here, where you have people racking up significant amounts of college debt without a profession that pays enough to afford it.
It's funny you mentioned that, because actually when I got out of school, one of my first jobs was working in student loans. Right, I was in a call center. So the federally funded Department of Education loans, I had to get, you know, calls on those, and, you know, work out payment plans or whatever. And I saw so many people that were 42 years old, 55 years old, working at a gas station plus working at Walmart, and they have $195,000 in student loan debt. And I can't
No.
tell you how many times I saw that. And
Oh, did you wait? What's the largest student loan debt you saw?
I've seen them over 300,000.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Oh, man.
I would see, well, here's the thing. It's like when we started subsidizing these loans, right, through government, that's when everything goes up, you know. So if the money's there, then of course tuition's going to go up because it's free money for the colleges. So that's why, like,
Yes.
if I wish I could just slap some of these kids upside the head today and just tell them it's because, you know, the hot topic right now is Biden's student loan bailouts. Well, who benefits from student loan bailouts?
Upper middle class kids in the universities.
Yep, the banks and the colleges as well, because
The colleges.
the people that should be getting slapped on the wrist for this are the colleges. Because, you know, if this was all done privately, it'd be like taking out a car or a mortgage. You know, they would assess your risk and say, okay, this degree that you're going for, there is a very low chance that you're going to get a job with this. So we're not going to pay you, or we're not going to fund you, you know, $80,000 or loan you $80,000 for this. Maybe we'll give you a little bit just for kicks, but no, we're not funding your entire education because there's zero chance that you're going to be a productive member of society. So
Exactly.
the more and more they do that, and it's like the colleges don't learn their lesson. I mean, if anything, they benefit from bailouts because, again, they can just keep increasing costs.
And on top of that, teaching is not especially expensive in general.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some cases involving expensive lab equipment or something like that,
Yeah.
but in general, teaching math, you know, it doesn't take a lot of expense.
And if you're really good at teaching math, then presumably there's other people that are really good, and then the market just plays out, right? You know, you negotiate your salary with that college against whoever else is competing for that position. And yeah, but I mean, like what they're doing now too, it's not even just like the teaching positions and stuff. It's like you have so many bureaucrats that end up in these universities, and it's like,
that's where the money goes.
Why is there 135 people in this HR department for a university? And it's like,
because they can.
And they don't hire real professors; they'll hire adjunct professors who they won't give any money to. So you have all the people who are teaching all the kids are making minimum wage, and but all the administrators are making big money, right?
Right. And at the same time, people are learning are not learning more marketable trade jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And if, for instance, I believe we're about ready for a manufacturing renaissance in this country.
Oh yeah.
And you need people who can, you know, work for the robots and things that interesting, fun skills that that's not taught in college, not taught in trade schools. And we need people to do all sorts of things that college isn't going to prepare them for.
The problem is STEM is hard. That's all. You know? I mean, I crap on like the younger generation a lot and stuff, but it's just it's just so much easier to go get a pretend degree, you know, and like it's hard to put in the work. I mean, I could go on and on about how, you know, how broken our education system is, and it really is. It's sad.
Yeah, sad. I mean, my father was a professor for 25 years, and he said, "You want to fix the education system? Abolish all student loans." Yeah, that was his. He's like, and people were like, "Well, how would people get degrees?" And like, "Well, they'll do what I did, which was to get a job, work part-time, and have my parents help me out." And I went into RMC, which is like ROTC in Canada.
That's another it's kind of another silver lining on this whole COVID cloud. I mean, with with the schools getting shut down, you're seeing a lot less people go because, I mean, they're not giving them tuition breaks for, you know, remote learning. So it's like, why bother? So
they are giving them room and board breaks.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't really make any sense to still have tuition the same or even higher. So
yeah, absolutely.
Now we finished the handling the education crisis. I see you once upon voted for Obama based on the fact he was going to give everyone free health care. How's that working out for you?
It didn't work, so, but it was a good wake up call. So again, I thought I was like a conservative, right? But I didn't quite put all the pieces together. Again, I mean, I didn't care about politics when I was a teenager or when I was in my early 20s. It was boring. This was like during like the George W. Bush years and stuff. So it's like, wasn't really paying attention too much. I've been diabetic since I was 7 years old. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and my insulin prices like started to skyrocket a lot in like the early 2000s. And not really knowing anything about economics or how these things work, and just kind of, you know, paying attention to what's going on a little bit more. There was always like, oh, well, the government's supposed to pay for it. You know, they're supposed to take care of us. And I'm like, yeah, they should. That sounds good. Right. So I actually did vote for him for the first time because, hey, free crap. Right. That sounds great. And then my prices just kept going up and up, like even more. Right. And I know we've all seen this movie before. Right. So that actually kind of got me to start thinking about things more, because it's like, all right, I'm not a kid anymore. I got to kind of be a responsible member of society and, you know, an educated, informed voter. And I discovered some Thomas Sowell videos talking about all this kind of stuff on Common Knowledge. And
Thomas Sowell, the gateway drug for conservatives.
Yes, yeah, he's the best. He's the best. You got to
get him
out there. It's, but yeah, that's and then who produces Uncommon Knowledge is Ricochet. So that's what actually kind of led me to Ricochet after a long journey of
I got a question. I don't know much about insulin. You said the price went up substantially.
Yes.
Does it cost a lot to manufacture insulin?
Not anymore. I mean, they used to do it like actually like from the animal, and now they have all sorts of like you know, like genetically engineered stuff that's far cheaper to produce, and they can produce far more of it. But the problem is, I mean, there's layers and layers of bureaucracy and patent laws too. There's no such thing as like generic insulin. So
really,
yeah.
Well, I would think that would be one of the first.
There is for some brands, yeah. Like there's multiple different kinds, right? Like depending on your situation, you take like a long-acting one plus like a short-acting one with meals, and there's different variations to that. But a lot of like the ones that actually work better are patented. So, and who makes patents? You know, like the FDA and like all these like government bureaucracies and stuff. So it's kind of like the student loan situation. Like when they're protected like that, the price is just
sure. But insulin's been around for a long time.
Yeah, 1920s.
As 1920s, yeah. As a treatment for diabetes, and I would think it would be, wow, it's a long time. Oh, that's 100 years. So it's been around for 100 years, and that means you could probably, probably be manufactured pretty efficiently at this point.
Well, the thing too is, when you add like, health insurance on top of that, you're adding more and more layers of red tape. And I remember during like before Trump got elected, I was only getting like, it wasn't even a 30-day supply. They would give me a 20-day. So I had to go back to the pharmacy every 20 days. And it was like almost like $100 for like one vial. And I take two different kinds. This was after insurance.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What's it before?
Before, I think it's $250, depending on like what kind it is. It might be like $500 or something. But
that's insane.
Yeah. And
that is insane.
I'll give Trump this. Like, I know he rolled back a lot of those regulations, and I get like I'll get a 90-day supply, like it should be, like, for most prescriptions. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they give me far more than 90 days worth too. Like, they kind of overwrite, so I don't have to keep going back and forth to the pharmacy. Mm-hmm. And it's like $80 for like 6 or 7 vials, so it's like way better. And it's like I'm looking
It's
at
a
some of the
huge
stuff,
difference.
some of the
It's
stuff
huge.
that they're talking about now too. It's like, oh God, we're gonna repeal Trump's Obamacare restrictions. I'm like, Obamacare restrictions? Obamacare is a restriction.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I got that to look forward to the next 4 years, but
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. I'm resilient.
David, put discussion of insulin on the list of things.
Oh yeah.
This is why you come here.
Yeah.
This is the reason why
Always learn something, Ricochet.
why people tune in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's rare we have someone biased with the economics of insulin.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, and yeah, and it's probably indicative of a lot of other mechanisms going on in the medical market, and it's indicative of something very wrong, I think.
Yeah.
The one of the things about Obamacare that I haven't heard mentioned is that the claim was that it was based on Romney care, and that in the early debates and all in 2008, no, I'm sorry, Romney 2012. In 2012, the debates, was, well, Obamacare is just like Romney care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big difference is the fact that Massachusetts is a very medium-sized state, and so the difference is a factor of 50 in size in people covered, and it's exactly the sort of thing that should be managed at a state level. And so different states can try different things, and not at a federal level where you can screw it up badly and make a lot of money through graft and corruption.
If you have similar demographics too, like throughout your state, like Massachusetts on average is like, they're kind of better off as far as like, median income and things like that. So, but when you lump everybody together and, try to apply like the same, it doesn't work. Like,
Well, in my experience driving through Massachusetts, it reminded me a lot of my experience driving through New York. It's like Boston. Great. Yeah. It's this big wealthy place. And then there's a whole lot of not Boston.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's mostly not Boston.
Where these, like, I remember driving through a tiny little town and picking up some knickknacks at like, they were just not even town. It was just like little roadside attraction after roadside attraction of these guys who are just running these antique stores all along this highway coming out of Massachusetts. So like,
oh yeah,
campaign pins from like Nixon.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's Boston's that was where the revolution started,
Oh, yeah.
And everything is very, I love the colonial atmosphere there. I lived there for a little while.
Oh, really?
Just in the 80s, and it was I just loved it. It was just beautiful. The scenery, the towns, also quaint, the architecture, all that's just beautiful.
Boston
Oldest
Commons
Constitution in the world, right? I think Massachusetts.
I'm sorry?
Oldest Constitution in the world, right? Massachusetts.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like was it San Marino in Italy might technically beat it because that was like in like 1600 or something.
yeah, maybe. Well, you got Roman Constitution, but was defunct by then.
Yeah.
You might have had, I don't know if the Venetians had a properly written down constitution or not. I mean, they had a nice little republic going for 800 years, but like elect your dictator for life kind of got the place.
So you're living in Utica now, right?
Yeah, like 10 mintes outside of Utica.
Okay.
It's called Clinton, New York.
Okay. What's Utica like right now? What's the scene there? I have no idea.
Not much.
Is there anything like, since it's you mentioned that the rusting manufacturing?
Yeah, I guess
infrastructure.
What they probably
is there any chance of that coming back? Is there any chance of it like a manufacturing renaissance there?
there's infrastructure there, and I mean they have all these plans for like downtown renovation and stuff, but as far as like actual commerce, and I haven't really. I mean, you've got your restaurants and stuff that do okay, but probably like one of the biggest things here is the FX Mats Brewery. That's based out of Utica, and that's still up and running. They do like was it Saranac Beers, Utica Club. They contract
Utica Club.
yeah.
Okay.
That's like the hipster beer around here. But,
Yeah,
they contract brew for Brooklyn Brewery.
All right.
They do it for Lake Placid as well. So they've got a pretty cool. I mean, the factory is really old. It's like, but it's got a lot of character, and they have like
Sure.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, breweries in Utica. That's right.
Yep.
Utica used to be big on beer.
Yeah. They have like a block party like in the summer, which last summer, of course, they didn't freaking do it, which is annoying. But they have a race every year where people from like all over the world come to, like even like like Nigerians run it and stuff. So they're pretty famous for that. It's called the Boilermaker race, which again they canceled that last year, which was whatever. But
well, I guess
that's what they're known for.
Canceling your governor soon. Apparently, he has been caught deflating the COVID death numbers by 50%.
They
love him here. I mean, I don't know. His dad
will love him when they lock him up. Hopefully,
yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, he's a war criminal.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let's get to the other thing you mentioned in your. You have read a presidential bio of every president.
Yes. Yeah. So I like to read a lot. I like to teach myself, how to do things and learn things, whatever. So I set a goal to do that. I found like just kind of doing like a random web searches. I found a website where a guy was actually reading multiples. He read like 7 books on George Washington and like 8 books on. I'm like, wow. Like, I don't know if I can do that, but I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to read one. I'm going to try to do it in 2 years, one on each one.
Oh, wow.
So I actually did. I finished last year. So it was pretty cool. Some of the guys are really hard to find biographies on. Like try to find a full length biography on Benjamin Harrison. It's not easy. You have like one choice. So
yeah.
And some of the newer ones too, like, I mean, you can, but you can't really write like a biography on Jimmy Carter right now, because, well, for one, I know he's not going to be doing much for the remaining years of his life, but he is still alive. Same with like, George W. Bush and stuff like that. So the newer ones too, they were kind of hard to find like comprehensive bios on. So like I had to cheat a little bit, but I pulled it off.
Okay.
But the rest of them, you did the rest?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I did the rest.
Well, okay. What are the more interesting ones?
Yeah.
That from
probably
a biography point of view.
Yeah, probably. And I'm not saying, just interesting, not like saying that they were great or anything like that. But
right.
Herbert Hoover was probably one of the most interesting people I've ever read about. Because if you think about it, this guy lived from the Gilded Age to the 1960s. People forget how long.
Oh,
Hoover outlived JFK. I think Hoover died in like 64 or 65 or something like that. And up until now, because I think Jimmy Carter just broke the record, but Hoover, I think, was he had the longest post-presidency. Maybe John Adams was close, but so he lived through so many interesting things. Plus, he wasn't a career politician. So like this guy actually, he had like his own mining companies in Australia. And he was a very, very talented engineer, good businessman, which actually kind of made him a bad politician. Like the author, he kind of tried to portray Hoover as like a technocrat. So he saw the economy as something that could be fiddled with like scientifically to get the right results. And of course, that kind of led him
a man of the time, though. That was very much standard issue for anyone at that period, though.
Well, he came after Coolidge and Harding, who didn't really do much of anything as far as interfering with the economy. So it was, he was like he almost kind of made like the blueprint for the New Deal, which is interesting because FDR followed him. And FDR actually campaigned on the fact that the government was spending too much and we needed to lower taxes. So think about that.
Yes, that's right.
He basically ran against everything Hoover wanted and then promptly governed by using everything Hoover said he was going to do.
And he gave it on
Yeah.
steroids too. So it was
Yeah.
Hoover 20. But yeah, but Hoover was extremely interesting. And he was kind of like he sort of reminded me of Nixon in that he came from like a very like isolated sort of background. Like I think Hoover was he was a Quaker. His dad died when he was like
Nixon.
it's like 6 or 7 years old. Maybe Hoover wasn't a Quaker. He was something. I'd have to look it up, but he was something similar to that.
One person that's very interesting is who he chose for his vice president, the first Native American.
Oh yeah,
vice president, like
Charles Chase. Charles Chase.
Something like that.
No,
he's like half Cherokee or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to think of the name. It's escaping me right now.
Yeah, he was like the former majority leader, or something.
He had a very long congressional history.
Yeah.
And Hoover's house is over here at Stanford, or one of his.
Hoover Institute. Right?
Well, there's a Hoover Institute, but the house.
Oh,
is
okay.
also here.
Charles Curtis.
Charles Curtis. Yeah, so he was interesting. Anybody from the founding generation is interesting, like all of these guys, because that was just, I mean, those guys had balls, like to do what they did, and so that's all good. And I think probably like one of the most underrated times is like Reconstruction up through the Progressive era, because that almost it isn't talked about at all. Like if you read like high school textbooks, it goes from Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson was impeached, Grant was president for a little bit, and then nothing happened until Teddy Roosevelt. But there's
like
so much
Grover
interesting.
Cleveland, the 26th and 28th president.
Cleveland actually lived in the town that I'm in right now, very briefly. His parents, I think, are actually buried a few miles north of here. So
cool. And of course, the band They Might Be Giants did a song called James K. Polk.
Oh yeah.
If you're familiar with it,
it's pretty interesting too. The book I read on Polk, I think it was fairly recent. So he had a few options for somebody who's probably not always talked about. He like if you look at like a general like mainstream consensus presidential ranking lists and stuff, Polk is usually in the top half. So he's not like a completely forgotten guy. So he had some interesting stuff.
And you had, was it Garfield getting shot?
Yep. The guy who, it's funny, I guess there's more history here than I thought, but the guy who actually shot Garfield, there was like a utopian socialist community in Oneida, New York, which is like less than half an hour from where I live. Yeah, and he actually his assassin Charles Guiteau, he actually lived there for a long period of time, and this guy was like legit crazy, right? He was off his rocker, and he was actually so crazy that they got rid of him from their community, right? And this was like a community that had like you all shared your wives. There was no such thing as private property. This guy was like the second coming of Jesus, and all this and that. So he was too crazy for them, and but yeah, he had a brief spell, right down the road from where I grew up. So I always thought that was kind of cool.
I just want to hear you name drop lots of upstate New York towns.
Let's see.
It sounds great.
There's a lot that begin with C for some reason. So I'm in Clinton. Then there's Canastota. There's Cazenovia. There's Chittenango. There's Camden. There's probably Cayuga. There's probably a few more that I'm not remembering, but the guy who actually for one of those sea towns, I think it's Cazenovia, the guy who wrote The Wizard of Oz books, he's from there. So they
Frank Baum?
Yep, they have yellow brick roads.
Of course they do.
In the village, and they have like a festival every year. So.
Of course they do.
Upstate, we try to hang on to whatever culture we have. Like we don't have much, so we'll promote anybody to sainthood up here.
I just love the hearing the names of them. That's all. Just because they're unusual, and you don't hear the names of upstate New York towns very much. And yeah, my town I grew up in, John Philip Sousa lived there. So there you go.
Yeah, a lot of them I think are like named after. There was a lot of tribes up here, you know, and
Yeah,
Colonial.
like how you
Yes,
A
yes.
lot of those names carried over, like Mohawk, Oneida.
Ontario has the same situation.
Yeah,
You have Mississauga. I mean,
yeah, yeah, right.
But yeah, that's great. I just love it. It's poetry, man. It's it's great to hear. It'd be fun to write a song that just name drops a ton of upstate New York
Yeah.
names.
Well, my hometown of Hamilton is like built on a swamp. I think the original name is by the Mississauga tribe. It's like, hey, it's that place we can sell to the stupid white guys.
Yeah.
So you were looking back at your presidential review of all those books. Is there any like president you think would be good to handle our times, other than the one?
Who's the one?
Trump. I mean,
Oh, okay.
like who would you get to kind of solve our situations these days? Looking at all those guys.
I'm not gonna go with one of the founders because I feel like that's too easy. I'll say Grover Cleveland.
Yeah, that's the
Because
interesting.
he came in as part of a losing party, right? The Democrats were completely discredited after the Civil War. And he was he had a very fast track politically. He was governor of New York. I think he was the mayor of, I want to say Buffalo, don't quote me on that. And then he was president. And this all happened within like less than like, I think like 4 or 5 years. So he had a very quick ascension politically, and he had a reputation of being a cleaner, right? So when there was corruption, which there was tons of that in the Republican administration post Civil War, Grover Cleveland cleaned things up. He had more vetoes than almost any president in history. And his vetoes were rock solid constitutionally. He vetoed like several internal improvements bills. You know, basically like, you know, kind of it's so common now that, you know, every agency, every bureaucracy wants more and more money from the central government, and they completely bypass the states and get it. But Cleveland vetoed all sorts of legislation like that. He was very good on currency. You know, he wanted sound currency because this was during like the gold versus silver debates.
Right.
When the other wing of the Democratic Party was starting to become, I don't want to say socialist, but we're getting into like the William Jennings Bryan period.
The gold speech.
Yes. Yep. So we're kind of leaning more left during that time. And there was actually a split in the party after Cleveland filled out his second term. And the Republicans were actually smart. William McKinley picked up those conservative Democrats and had them, you know, kind of formed a coalition with his Republican Party. But anyways, like getting back to the question, I think he would be great because he was rock solid constitutionally. He really understood, and he was not intimidated by, you know, corruption, or he did something really cool that I think I always kind of like this as like a little side note. So corruption was obviously rampant in that period. He would whenever he had somebody in the White House, he would leave the doors open and talk extremely loud so that everybody knew what he was saying and there was no room to misinterpret things. So, I mean, now we have, you know, recordings and cell phones and stuff that won't work, but I always thought that was kind of cool. Like I like the mindset behind that. He kind of like Trump in some ways, like you knew what you got. Like he was, he might not have said things that you liked, but he was very honest.
How many presidents were not politicians? Besides Trump and Hoover, any others?
Eisenhower.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Zachary Taylor.
Yeah, he's the one was not elected to any position.
Yeah.
Then became vice president.
Zachary Taylor was president, and he died like 2 or 3 years in. Then Millard Fillmore, his vice president, became president. Yeah. But yeah, Zachary Taylor was so unpolitical, he didn't even vote in his own election. So, I always found that interesting too.
Oh, that's great.
There might be others. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, there's definitely.
Once you get into the 20th century, though, like everybody, Trump is such an anomaly, but everybody's got, you know, decades in politics. Joe Biden, I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, Garfield, as I recall, he's the only person was a sitting congressman, senator-elect, and then president, all at
I
the same
believe-
time.
Yeah.
And
He was
then
actually
he gets shot.
he was indicted too when he was in the Congress. He was part of the that credit mobiler scandal
Mm.
before his presidency.
Yeah, he shows up to try and get himself appointed to the Democrat convention, trying to get the Senate seat, gets the Senate appointment, and then they nominate, because he's been glad handing all weekend long, and they've gone through 300 ballots on the other guys. They're like, hey, you know who would be a good guy? We'll make it Garfield.
Yeah.
And he was the first one who did, they called it like the front porch campaign, where the president candidate would sit on his house lawn and like interview with reporters while the vice president did the whistle stops, kind of like a certain president today.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually since we're talking about this, I'm actually working on a ranking list right now that I'm going to be sharing with Ricochet once I
Cool.
I got a lot to write. I mean, there's only 45 of them, so it's going to take a little while, but yeah, something to look out for.
Well, I mean, shortly, depending on things, you might get 46.
I know, right? Maybe the Biden administration will be over next week for all we know.
Oh yeah, well, I just heard watching something today where he sat down to do two executive orders, and he was out of the office in 5 minutes because he couldn't answer, even wasn't aware where he was.
Yeah. It's funny because people like us, we're plugged in, right? We know this stuff, but you talk to a lot of average people on the street that didn't really know what they're voting for. They're like, what is this? Why is it's yeah, this has been him for the past 2 years. It's like, you didn't know? It's like, no, I didn't. It's like, oh God.
Well, it's the Woodrow Wilson presidency 2.0, where the wife's running the show.
Nope.
Well, it was only at the end, right?
It was 2 years of her, though.
End of his second term is when he had his stroke.
And it was like the last 9 months, year or so.
A little
Of
less
his
than a year, I
presidency?
think. Yeah, and that's actually where we got the what's the amendment to remove the one that they're just talking about with Trump?
Oh, the 25th Amendment.
Is it the 25th? Okay.
The 25th came about because of Eisenhower.
Eisenhower. Well, it did pertain to Eisenhower because he had a heart attack. It actually was it was amended, I believe, during Wilson because of his stroke. He was literally it didn't say in the Constitution he's not dead. So what do we do with this? And that's when that's when that became ratified.
It comes about being ratified according to this 1965.
1965. Oh, okay. I might be thinking something.
Ratified by the states by 1967. They apparently, I think it was much more because of what happened with Eisenhower than Wilson, I'm going to guess, because.
Now, also Wilson had this during this time when he was incapacitated. There was also a recession or small depression then. And the good news is that Wilson couldn't do anything about it to make it worse, like FDR did.
Yeah.
And remind me, who was it after Woodrow Wilson?
Harding. Warren Harding.
Warren Harding, yeah. And so Warren Harding was able to step in and save.
Because he didn't really do anything. There's I think Harding's extremely underrated.
Same here.
Yeah.
I'll just throw that out there. But there's an excellent book about that period. It's called The Forgotten Depression, 1920 to 1921. And it's basically kind of tells a story about how that was the last time in the government where the government or depression and the government didn't get involved with it. And stuff sucked for 6 months and then it went back to normal. And then we had the Roaring 20s. So, it's like you leave it alone and it fixes itself. It's just throughout American history, there was always a recession every 10 years or so. And it's a natural cycle of things.
Yeah. And regular economic activity fixes it.
Yep.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, that's
How
a
cool
pretty
is
good
that?
place to leave it. Is maybe if you guys would get your government out of the way, we could just go back and everything will heal itself. I know it's a crazy thought.
Yeah.
So it's been great having a chance to interview you like this and get to know you a bit better. And we'll see you in the comments.
And cover these great topics. This is fun.
Yeah, I know. I thought the presidents would be a great way to end it. Okay, well, thanks for coming by, everybody, and we'll see you in the comments on Ricochet.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
See you later.